That land was no good for anything but tornadoes and snakes. Her father said they had to sell it. But one day, Sarah heard something beneath her land. She heard the oil flowing underground like a fast-moving river. But Sarah's parents didn't believe her. And they didn't even have the $30 to pay the property tax. But Sarah was certain she had heard the oil. She said, "God gave me ears to hear it. He gave me the land for a reason." So Sarah and her father Joe started visiting the oil companies in Muskogee. But these people wouldn't even let a black man enter their offices. They kept throwing Joe out. Joe went to a company called Pan Oklahoma Petroleum, but they mistook him for the trash man. Meanwhile, Sarah walked into a cafe. But this cafe was for whites only. A man sitting there offered thirsty Sarah a lemonade instead of water. After Sarah drank the lemonade, the waitress picked up her cup with a towel. Sarah tried to thank the man, but the waitress quickly ushered her outside. On the other side, Joe was handed the trash. He said, "I'm not here for the trash. I came to ask if you'll dig for oil on my daughter's land." Just then, Sarah barged in. She said, "I have 160 acres, and there's oil beneath it." Sarah even pointed out her location on the map. She could read a map. Big Jim went with them to their land. He said, "It's definitely going to be a long shot drilling out here, for sure. It'll take a lot of money and resources from our company. We'll have to drill hundreds of feet deep into the earth. It'll take months." So Sarah said, "You gotta lease the land first." Big Jim, impressed by her intelligence, presented his standard contract. "I'll give you 50 cents per acre for 6 months." But Sarah knew the standard rate wasn't 50 cents, it was $1. She demanded a 1/8 royalty on top of that. Big Jim said, "All right, I'll give you 8 points if there's a gusher." Sarah read through the entire contract first. When Joe asked her about it, she explained the royalty to him. So for the next 3 months, the Pan Okie Company started drilling. Work went on full speed. But after 3 months, Big Jim said, "We came up dry. You can have the equipment. It costs more to haul it off than just leave it." Hearing this, Sarah felt defeated. But just a few days later, a man came to their house to buy the land. He told Joe, "How about we discuss it man to man?" Joe asked Sarah to leave. As Sarah walked away, she said, "It's my land." She stood to the side, listening to everything. The man offered Joe $2 per acre. Joe said, "The county office told me it was worth 3. The man replied, "Are you going cagey on me?" Joe said, "This is my daughter's land. I need to make a little profit." The man immediately offered $6. Joe said, "It's a fair offer, but I need to ask my daughter first." Hearing this, the buyer turned around and left. But Sarah understood that Pan Okie must have sent this man. They had definitely found something there, and now they wanted it for themselves. Sarah's mother Rose quickly pulled out the land deed. White folks can do with land what they want as long as they got this. The whole family rushed to hide the deed in the land. But then they saw a car approaching. Sarah's family hid. These men, armed with guns, entered their house and started searching for the deed. Sarah's dog Blue ran toward them, barking. But they shot him. The men left. Big Jim got angry at them. "Now they know that we want it." Meanwhile, Sarah's dog Blue, wounded from the gunshot, ran off somewhere. Sarah said, "That deed is a curse. They'll shoot us too." But Rose said, "You were the one who said God gave you that land for a reason." The next day, Sarah went looking for her dog. All she found was his collar. But while searching for Blue, Sarah ended up at an oil camp. She wasn't afraid to walk among these rough men. And that's where she ran into Bert again, the man from the cafe. Sarah told him, "We met at the cafe. And you were circling names in the newspaper." Bert's partner Mace said, "Yeah, that must have been him." Bert was also searching for oil. He called himself a finder and a wildcat. Sarah explained, "There's oil beneath my land. Pan Okie leased my land and tried to ditch me by saying it's dry. And they sent a swindler to con me into selling the land outright, offering me $6 an acre for a dry hole." Sarah needed a partner now, someone who could help her get the oil out. But Bert said, "Good luck with that, honeybee." Hearing this, Sarah got angry. "I'm offering you a business proposition, and you're treating me like a child." Bert stood up and walked back to Sarah. He asked her about her land. Bert didn't have his own equipment to extract the oil. Sarah said, No problem. Pan-Oki left all their equipment on my land. Hearing this, Bert grabbed his partner Mace and headed out with Sarah. But Sarah said, "Before we go, we need to work out our terms." They decided on a 50-50 split and shook hands. Bert was thrilled when he saw the Grade A equipment. He said, "That's some good ground too. It's a classic anticline dome." Bert got Sarah's parents' blessing and started drilling. Pan-Oki had already drilled 1,000 feet deep. After they abandoned the rig, they gave it a new name, Sarah's Oil. One day, while talking, Bert explained, "Mace and I started with gold and silver, and now we've moved on to oil. We've done it all. I once made 70 grand on a gusher, and then I lost it all on the very next dry hole." They were sure there was oil here. The question was, how much? Just then, Big Jim showed up. Mace ran inside and grabbed a gun. Big Jim said, "This is my land. I'll give you 20 minutes to leave." He had the lease. Big Jim had smudged the date and changed it. Sarah said, "That's no better than kids cheating at school." Bert aimed his gun at Big Jim. Big Jim called Bert a bunco man, someone who cons women out of their money. Big Jim offered Sarah $20 an acre. But Sarah said, "I ain't selling." Big Jim's arrival made Bert realize there was a lot of oil here, and they were fixing to fight them for it. One day, while drilling, their machine started having problems. Bert told Mace to stop the machine. Everyone was afraid the machine would blow. Mace checked from below and said the machine was stuck. They were nearly 1,500 feet down. But this might be the end of the road. We'll have to abandon the well. But Mace said, "We could dynamite the loose rock." Bert thought it was too risky and would require a lot of explosives. Just then, Sarah said, "No wonder you guys come up with nothing but dry holes. You give up so easy." Mace suggested trying a wall hook. But that idea worked only half the time, and wall hooks were hard to find. And they'd need more equipment, which would cost more money. Sarah said, "My teacher says everything in life has value. What do we got here of value?" Hearing this, Bert got an idea. He took Sarah and a mud sample to a geologist to get it tested. The test would cost $10. Bert pulled money from all over his clothes and scraped together the $10. The test would take a few hours. Bert and Sarah went out for a walk, and Bert ran into a woman there. Bert had claimed to know her dead husband, who was going to buy little oil leases in her name. Bert charmed the woman with his words. She invited him to dinner. In other words, Bert had flirted with this woman before. A little while later, the geologist told them, "The oil is likely down a few more thousand feet, and it's not good oil because it's heavily tainted with salt water." Bert and Sarah felt discouraged again. But something didn't feel right to Bert. They waited there for a while. As soon as the geologist stepped outside, Bert grabbed him. "Where are you going?" The geologist was taking the sample to Pan-Oki. They had paid him off. Now they'd have to get the sample tested properly. Bert said, "There's an old man in this coon town up there." Coon is a racist term. Hearing it, Sarah got angry. Bert realized he said something wrong. He apologized to Sarah. Sarah said, "That kind of talk is automatic with some people." Bert said, "But that ain't me." Sarah said, "The town coming up is Taft. It's a black town. My town." They went to see a man who didn't have a degree from any recognized school, but he said, "I know more than any still-breathing geologist." He charged $5 for the test. Bert and Sarah sat there, waiting for the test to finish. When the test was done, the geologist got excited. He said, "I have never seen anything like this. It's got density that's alarming." The gravity reading came in at 40 degrees, which was the lightest. The crude is so pure that the field could be the richest in all of Oklahoma. Sarah's got trainloads of oil. But their well was stuck, and they needed a lot of money to fix it. Mace said, "Should we rob a bank now?" So the next day, Bert went to the bank to get a loan. Several cars were heading their way. Pan-Oki's legal counsel came to hand Sarah some papers. It was a legal filing to return all of Pan-Oki's equipment and a claim on all the oil. They had filed a claim on the land based on the sublease Sarah signed. They claimed Sarah had unlawfully thrown them off the land. Bert laughed. "An 11-year-old girl threw you out?" Bert made it clear. "Any of you Pan-Oki goons step foot on this land, and we will shoot you." The counsel privately told Bert, "My employer has a generous offer for you. And you know this whole thing could be wrapped up in the courts for years. But Bert rejected the offer without even hearing it. So they started beating him. Bert sat in the car with Big Jim. Big Jim said, "What a wonderful business we're in. But what's this little girl gonna do with all that money?" Courts have concerns. Local judges are tired of dealing with an uneducated and underage ex-slave population. The state is insisting on white guardians. Bert just had to become Sarah's guardian. And after that, he could sell the land to Pan Oki. Bert thought for a moment and demanded 15 points in return. Big Jim said, "Standard royalty is 12.5. Bert said, "If you want me to Welsh on this girl, you gotta make it worth it for me." Big Jim agreed. After that, Bert went to Sarah and told her whole family to grab their rifles and leave the house. Rose said in fear, "If they want the land, they can have it." Rose was only worried about her daughter's safety. Bert told Mace about the Pan Oki deal. "We'll get 15%. And you heard Sarah's mom. They wanna, and the well is spiked. The best thing we can do is let the big dogs come in and spud a new well." But Mace didn't want to betray Sarah. Bert said, "In the world we live in, they're not gonna let a colored girl hold onto a mother lode this size. And besides, I'm gonna make it up to her afterward." Meanwhile, when Sarah's family got home, their dog was back. He was alive. Everyone was happy to see him. That night, Rose asked Sarah, "If I had asked you before, what would you give to have old Blue back?" Sarah said, "Everything." Rose said, "You still feel that way?" Rose believed it was a sign. The very next day, Bert came to get Sarah to sign the guardianship papers. Sarah said, "This makes you the boss of my life." Bert said, "I need you to trust me, because I know the system and how to work the system." As Sarah signed, she looked at her parents. She asked Bert, "This is so you can protect me, right?" Bert said, "Yes." Sarah signed. Now there would be a court hearing to make sure everything was verified. Sarah shook Bert's hand, just like before. Bert left. Joe didn't trust Bert much. He's been chasing riches his whole life. Is he worthy of trust? Sarah believed he was. Her father didn't. Sarah's mom said, "Well, I won't tolerate this at my kitchen table. We can't see what's inside a person's heart, but tomorrow we can walk into that courtroom with our heads held high." That meant Sarah would have to speak in front of the judge. Rose said, "God will give you the words." Outside the court, many black people came to support Sarah and oppose the white guardian law, because many guardians were stealing oil-rich land from their trustees. And everyone had found out there was oil beneath Sarah's land. Sarah arrived at court. A woman, Miss Barnard, volunteered to offer her services on Sarah's behalf. Bert said, "You'll get your share." But Sarah said, "This ain't about me. It's about your soul, Mr. Bert Smith." Mace dropped Sarah's family off at home. But on his way back, he spotted a hidden car. It was Pan Oki's men. They pulled out guns and confronted Mace. Mace pulled out his gun too, but there were two of them. They killed Mace. Hearing the gunshots, Rose told her two children to run toward Creek Nation. Pan Oki's men had arrived outside their house. Rose grabbed a knife. Joe grabbed his gun. A little while later, Bert saw Pan Oki's men leaving. Miss Barnard appeared in front of Bert. She was taking a journalist named Mr. Farr to meet Sarah. Bert asked her to take him along. When they arrived, Joe came out with his gun. He explained that Pan Oki's men had come for Sarah. "I had to shoot to get them to leave." Bert went looking for Mace and found only his dead body. Miss Barnard said, "Sarah is next. They maintain a legal claim to the land based on what you signed over. And they want to kill her so someone like me can't go charging back to court." Bert said, "What if we go back to that judge and cancel the guardianship and give it to you?" But for that, they'd have to find Sarah. Sarah, her little brother, and the dog were waiting for their people at South Stream, following their mom's instructions. Pan Oki's men entered Creek territory. They asked about a colored girl. "We just want the girl." Getting no response, they moved on. Meanwhile, Sarah was praying, "Help me, Jesus." And then she saw a car coming toward her. But it was Pan Oki's thugs. Sarah told her brother to run. The thugs started shooting at them. But just then, the tribal police arrived. Sarah's family came right behind them. Rose reunited with her children. Sarah found out about Mace's murder. Bert apologized to her for everything. Barnard went to the judge. The young lady's guardianship needs to be re-examined, and America is watching as her life remains in danger. The judge understood and found a mistake in the documents. Bert wasn't from Oklahoma. He was from Texas. But he had claimed in the documents that he was an Oklahoma resident. He couldn't prove full Oklahoma residency. Because of this, the guardianship became null and void. Sarah made Miss Barnard her next guardian. The judge would notify Pan Oki about this. But he told them to be prepared. Bert had a plan to stop Pan Oki. He brought dynamite. Rose asked, "What's this for?" Bert said, "We bury that dynamite about 1,000 feet underground. So either that well is gonna cave in on itself, or it's gonna bring forth everything we've been hoping for." The next morning, Big Jim arrived at Sarah's land. He came with a white flag just to talk. Bert let him come inside. Rose hid both her children. Big Jim said, "You people want a war?" Joe said, "No, just leave." Big Jim had hidden a machine gun in his car. Everyone took cover. Sarah quickly blasted the dynamite inside the well. Everything started shaking. Oil shot out of the ground. Sarah ran toward it, overjoyed. Big Jim said, "That's my oil." He pulled out his gun. But Bert stopped him. "I've planted dynamite on your surrounding wells too." As Big Jim aimed his gun at Sarah, Joe shot the gun out of his hand. The police arrested him. Sarah danced with joy, watching her oil. Her dream had come true. Sometime later, everyone was celebrating. But then the widow showed up, the one Bert had borrowed money from. Bert would have to leave. When Sarah saw him going, she said, "Where are you going?" Bert explained that the widow owned 250% of his share. Sarah said, "But we're partners. I'll help you." But Bert didn't want to take Sarah's money. Sarah had already taught him so much. She talked about his soul, something no one else had ever done. Bert said, "I'm a treasure hunter. Some other treasure is out there waiting for me." Despite Sarah's protests, he said goodbye and left. After that, Sarah did many things. But the first thing she did was buy that cafe and open it for everyone. And with that, friends, this story comes to an end. Let us know in the comments how you liked this explanation. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel.